The difference between stagnation and getting an additional 5 referrals per month, every month in your practice is convenience. And I take that a little step further and call it hyperconvenience. Good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Dr. Scott. Our next referral essence component is convenience. Now, please don't be deceived by the casual name of this very, very, very crucial element for referral intensity. You have the opportunity here to increase your practice production by 20% or more. Keep in mind, you can't be overpriced. We already talked about cost in the last couple of weeks. And assuming you're not trying to price yourself out of practice, the material here in the next couple of weeks, talking about convenience and hyperconvenience, will do more for your personal financial future than if you won the lottery. This concept really ties everything together as far as practice success is concerned. So again, welcome to Coffee with Dr. Scott. We're going to get at it in a few seconds. I do want to show you that I have some guests today. Let's see which one I have to hit. That one, right behind me, right over my cup of coffee. The kiddos, say hi, guys. Hi. They're off to reading, and now they're on TV. Look at that coat my son is wearing. That is my 18-year-old's coat she was about to get rid of, and he stole it. My 18-year-old daughter, mind you. She was selling it. Yes, let's call it selling. All right, let's get back here. Anyways, question of the day. We got a lot going on down here today. I don't know if you can hear the chickens, but we had a little chicken incident last night. There was a raccoon in our backyard, so we had to go out and save the chickens. They're now inside my basement. It's nonstop around here. Anyways, the question of the day, what's your favorite GIF? And it is GIF. I looked it up. I've always said GIF. So I'm not going to be a GIF Nazi, but it is pronounced GIF. So what is your favorite GIF or GIF? Put in the comments down below. What's the last one you sent to somebody? What's your favorite? I get a kick out of them every time someone sends me one. It always applicable, makes me laugh. Sorry for the chickens. Anyways, so put a GIF, any GIF, down in the comments down below. I put my favorite, which is the Tom Hanks' Forrest Gump, just waving like crazy. One of the ones that I send quite a bit, actually. Let's see. I got a Jim Carrey one coming up here. All right, so put your favorite GIF in the comments down below. All right, let's get into convenience. So, I don't know if you can hear the chickens, but they are loud this morning. I'm going to show you how you can not only remove one of the most insidious referral barriers out there, but I'm also going to show you how you can get access to a literal untapped wealth of new patients. There is a premium in today's world on consumer convenience. And I have to admit, to me, it came somewhat of a surprise when I was in practice and as I started consulting. Certain negative forces have put a downward pressure on most practices. Those are namely managed care and also increased competition. So while competitive pricing and value selling, like we talked about in the cost essence component, can help you kind of level the playing field, understanding these convenience dynamics can give you an edge that few practices in the country can match. And again, as I talk about secrets of high performance chiropractors on Mondays, it all gets wrapped around this convenience concept. If you really want to grow to different levels, it's a matter of making space. I always talk about practice growth being very, very simple. It's a two-step process. Make space and then fill it. This convenience concept is all about making that space, which so many people just pass over. And they start working on filling the space that they don't even have. And that's why people lose a lot of money on advertising. They start doing advertising to get new patients in, but they can't even fit the new patients because they don't have the hyper convenience that we're looking for. And in so doing, they get new patients, but their practice doesn't grow. So then, in essence, they wasted the money on the marketing, even though it seems like it worked. They really haven't done anything to the practice growth because they never made a space for those patients to go to in the first place. So with convenience, you don't have to take all the risks associated with paid advertising, wondering if it's going to work at all, and if it does, do you have a place to put these people? So you can have all the referrals and all the walk-in patients you want, but it can cost you some money. It can cost you upwards of $1 million to get all those walk-ins, to get all those referrals. Now, how's that possible? When someone's impressed with your clinic services or your prices or your staff's winning personality or your clinical excellence, isn't that free? I mean, all that cost was the smile and the kind word, right? Well, you couldn't be farther from the truth. I told you that referral patients weeks ago, when we first started referral mastery, I told you that referral patients, they purchase more, they're easier to work with, they show up for their appointments, they refer their friends, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Referral patients are way better than advertising patients, hands down, and no one's going to argue with me on that one. But I never said the referrals were cheap, or even cheaper than advertising patients. Referral patients are indeed a blessing, especially for poorly organized practices or practices that have staff that are half trained or unmotivated. Strong referrals are everything you want in a patient, but they're not cheaper than advertising patients. They're just better. And that's very much different than cheaper. So practices want to maximize the number of referral patients they want to bring in because, again, that leads to less advertising, leads to less having to get other new patients if we get more referral new patients. So you want to increase your referral patients, but you also want to achieve an optimum monthly profit, right? Well, herein lies the problem because you really can't do both at the same time. So convenience, as we talk about it, is more of a patient term. The practice word for convenience is capacity, or as I call it, productive capacity. Or from this point on forward, we'll just call it capacity. Or I also like to call it peak time capacity, because it takes this capacity to provide true convenience for your patients. And in order to provide true convenience for your patients, you have to have the capacity to do so. And that's what's going to lead to more referrals in your practice. So it's not just about convenience that inspires a patient to refer. It is hyper convenience. So as I told you before, the difference between your practice just being stagnant and getting an additional 5 referrals every single month is that convenience. It's not running behind. It's not making patients wait for days to get on the schedule. If you do those things, that simply just manages to not frustrate patients. Hyper-convenience, on the other hand, inspires patients to refer. Hyper-convenience looks like you're effortlessly delivering this much appreciated and totally unexpected level of service. So if hyper-convenience is the goal, and I'm going to tell you it is, then hyper-capacity is the price you have to pay to reach that goal. So what you have now is productive capacity. In fact, you would argue, and I would agree with you, that you have excess productive capacity. I mean, after all, aren't you just standing around parts of your day with no one to treat? And again, please understand that this concept, I'm talking about normal times, not during this shutdown, because you're probably standing around. Well, I would think with patients' practice volumes down, is people will be standing around more, but most of my clients are telling me they're actually busier now because they have to wipe down tables, they have to do all this additional stuff in order to see a patient. So please remove all that from your brain as we talk about hyper convenience and hyper capacity, because I'm talking about during the recovery period. I'm talking about when things are back to normal. You need to create, you're still sitting around sometimes with no one to treat. And that's the heart of referral mastery. Yes, you have excess productive capacity, but not at certain times of the day. You have excess capacity during times of the day that are unpopular with patients. So, here you are wanting patients to take off work repeatedly so that you can fill up your slow times, thus avoiding you having to increase your overhead in the form of additional staff, space, equipment. Well, how's that working out for you? Am I mistaking, or are you still running around chaotically during the busy times of the day, the afternoons, and still sitting around with nothing to do during the slow times? I still don't know if you can hear that chicken or not, but so how long do you have to wait to be convinced that patients aren't going to fill up your slow times of the day? You have to wait a year? You have to wait 5 years? Just give it up. Patients aren't ever going to fill your slow times of the day. It doesn't matter how much you advertise, doesn't matter how much you ask for referrals, that isn't when people want to come in. If you're a CPA, everyone wants their taxes done during the first 3.5 months of the year, right? So if you told everybody, you're an accountant, and you're like, that's not a good time for us. I'm just going to take off for those first 3 months. Just come back in the summer. I'll do your taxes then. What would happen? Well, I can tell you what would happen. The same thing that's happened to you now during your slow times of the day. So that's a general, metaphor for what happens to you on a daily basis. But let me sum it up. If you're looking for more new patients, you needn't look any further than the high demand times of your day. You already have excess demand in your practice during these times. You're waiting to figure out a way to get excess demand during the slow times, and that's just not going to happen. You've got to create hyper convenience during your busiest times of the day. So one of my rules is always try to figure out at your busiest times, how can you see 2 more new patients in the middle of that busy time? If you can figure out how to provide hyperconvenience to everybody in the practice during your busiest times already, and still add 2 additional new patients to the schedule, then you've got the formula for getting additional referrals in your practice. So how do you do that? Well, we're going to be talking about it over the next couple of weeks. But the basics, as I always talk about with capacity or hypercapacity, is staff, space, or equipment. You've got to make sure that you have enough staff, space, or equipment to see those additional 2 new patients every day during your busiest time of the day. What would it take? And if you sit down and think about that and write that stuff out, it takes a little less than you think. And you might be afraid of spending the money to do that. But you're wasting money now during your slow times of the day. So to hire somebody additional during the busy times of the day, or to get additional equipment so you can see more people through there, let's say you're doing some sort of a therapy or rehab or something of that nature, to have additional therapy so we don't have a bottleneck at those times, to allow us to push more patients through during the busy times of the day is the secret to providing that hyperconvenience, to do it effortlessly, and to then inspire referrals. And I can tell you, I don't want to say all, but the majority of the clients that I work with, especially on-site, when I go in and I do my capacity work, and their practice jumps up 20%, it's happened where it's gone up to 40% in a week's time, simply because we removed some of the barriers, we provided hyperconvenience. Within a week, we can grow 20%. And the cool thing about that is not only do they grow 20%, but at the end of that week, the doctors tell me it seemed easier than it did before. They grow 20%, and it seemed easier to do that. Their staff tells them how many people they saw that week, and they're like, really? When? It didn't feel like I saw that many people. That's because we added more capacity. We added more convenience. We made it easier to see people. And in so doing, again, we made it easier on the doctor. We're able to increase the practice by 20%, and we inspired referrals because the patients actually got better care during that time. All right. These chickens have to get out of my basement. Hey, if you haven't answered the question today yet, put a GIF down in the comments down below. Any GIF will do. Like I said, I see a Jim Carrey one down there. I see a couple other ones coming in. We'll be doing the weekly recap tomorrow on the show. Let me get that up there. Not that that really matters. Tomorrow we're going to do the weekly recap. So we're going to go over all the shows from this week, give you a little bit more information about those. Next week, we will continue convenience here on Referral Mastery. Make sure you stick around for the next, I think, 2 weeks. We're going to be really digging into convenience, helping you to provide hyperconvenience so you can have that 20% automatic growth as well. And again, do it effortlessly and also get more referrals. If you have not joined our High Performance Chiro group, make sure you do that. The link is in the description. And I will see you all tomorrow morning, Friday morning, 8 a.m. Central Daylight Time.